Breaking inside the palace. Catherine walked into a restricted royal briefing, uninvited and unscheduled, and stopped everything. One calm sentence froze senior aides, shifted strategy, and exposed deep cracks behind closed doors. This was not protocol, not polite, and not accidental. What she said is now echoing across the monarchy. The unexpected moment. Catherine walks into the room. It happened without warning, and that's exactly why it sent shockwaves through the palace. Senior royals and top strategists were deep inside a classified royal briefing. A meeting so controlled that every attendee had been vetted, every agenda point pre-approved. The focus was delicate, managing Camilla's reduced role, navigating Charles's health questions, and planning the next phase of public messaging. Then the doors opened, and Catherine walked in. There was no announcement, no prior notice, no soft knock from an aide. Catherine, who had been absent from royal decision-making for months due to recovery, simply entered the room with the quiet authority of someone who knew her presence alone would change everything. One insider said the room froze instantly, like time stopped for 3 seconds. She was not scheduled to be there. Her name was not on the briefing list. Even senior staff looked at each other in confusion, a rare moment when protocol failed and instinct took over. People sat straighter, some stepped back, and every whispered side conversation instantly died off. As one aide put it, it wasn't dramatic, it was controlled, but the message was unmistakable. Catherine came because she needed to be there. This wasn't just a return, this was a statement. Her first direct involvement in internal affairs since stepping back for health reasons. And she chose this meeting, this subject, this moment. It told everyone in the room that she already knew what the meeting was about, and that she didn't approve of its direction. Her entrance alone changed the entire energy. A senior advisor said, almost stunned, the tone shifted the second she stepped forward. It was like someone had opened a window in a stale room. Her posture was calm, her voice steady, but her presence carried something stronger than authority. It carried clarity. People didn't look at their papers. They didn't check their notes. They simply watched her, waiting to see why she had come. Because Catherine doesn't interrupt. She doesn't storm. She doesn't grandstand. When she arrives unexpectedly, it means the conversation behind those doors is drifting too far from the values she believes the monarchy must stand for. And before she said a single word, everyone in that room understood the truth. This wasn't a misstep. This was a deliberate intervention. What happened next is the moment that would ripple far beyond the palace walls. Because Catherine didn't just show up. She spoke, and what she said left the room stunned. What Catherine said, the line that stunned the palace. Catherine didn't raise her voice. She didn't lecture. She didn't accuse. She waited until every eye was on her, then delivered the sentence that would leave the room silent. We are losing sight of who we serve. That's all it took. 7 words that cut through weeks of spin, days of planning, and hours of polished talking points. No one interrupted. No one argued. And for a full 5 seconds after she spoke, not a single person in that royal briefing room dared to say a word. This wasn't a rhetorical flourish. It was a course correction. According to one senior staffer present, Catherine's tone was measured but heavy with meaning. She didn't look angry. She looked disappointed. And in a palace built on etiquette, disappointment from the Princess of Wales hits harder than outrage. The meeting had been focused on strategy, optics, timing, press responses. The subject matter included the public's growing concern about Camilla's reduced role, the king's health, and how best to control the narrative. But what had been missing from the conversation, Catherine pointed out with brutal precision, was truth. She reminded the room that the monarchy didn't exist to protect itself. It existed to serve the public, especially during moments of uncertainty. And when royal decisions are driven more by fear of headlines than by honesty, trust is the first thing to die. A top aide later described her words like this: "It wasn't confrontation, it was conviction. You could feel the guilt spread across the table." Catherine reportedly touched on the emotional disconnect between the palace and the public, especially during her own absence from royal life. She said the people had shown kindness, patience, and loyalty, and deserved more than carefully scripted press releases and staged photo ops in return. Her line, "We are losing sight of who we serve," wasn't just about the conversation that day. It was about every move the palace had made in recent months that prioritized control over connection. She was speaking not as a royal strategist, but as a wife, a mother, a future queen, and someone who still understood what the public needed to feel in times of national doubt. And she didn't just speak to the room, she spoke for someone. Because in that moment, it became clear that Prince William's voice, missing from that meeting, was very much present through hers. The impact was instant. People stopped talking tactics and started asking harder questions. And that, insiders say, is when some began to realize this wasn't just a surprising moment. It was a turning point. The context. What the briefing was really about. The private briefing Catherine walked into wasn't just any meeting. It was one of the most sensitive internal discussions held at the palace this December. Held at 10 a.m. sharp in a secured conference wing, it brought together senior advisors, top media consultants, and trusted royal aides. On the table, a detailed strategy to handle public confusion over Queen Camilla's reduced visibility and the growing speculation surrounding King Charles's health, which has now become impossible to ignore. Insiders say the mood in the room was tense. Advisors were pushing for a controlled media campaign, with plans to scale back Prince William's appearances to avoid outshining the king. One senior aide admitted, there was a strong push to shift the spotlight back to the monarch, even if it meant reshaping Camilla's role behind the scenes. It gets more complicated. William's absence from the meeting wasn't just a scheduling issue. Sources now believe it was intentional, a quiet signal that he did not support the direction being discussed. That made Catherine's sudden appearance even more powerful. She didn't just show up. She interrupted a narrative that was already being shaped without her or William involved. The meeting also revealed a growing divide inside the palace, between those loyal to the traditional top-down messaging and others, like Catherine, who want a more honest and human approach. This wasn't just a conversation about public appearances, it was about control, credibility, and who truly speaks for the future of the monarchy. And Catherine? She made it clear she wasn't going to watch this play out from the sidelines. One attendee summed it up best. She walked in like she already knew everything, and she didn't come to ask permission. As we move to the next moment, what's been building behind Catherine's words, it becomes clear this wasn't just about this one meeting. Behind her words, Catherine's private frustrations surface. Catherine's bold move wasn't just a reaction to that one December meeting. It was the result of months of quiet frustration. Since stepping back in March 2025 to recover from her health challenges, she's watched the palace from the sidelines, and she hasn't liked what she's seen. According to insiders, Catherine has been deeply unsettled by how the palace handled Camilla's visibility during her absence. While Catherine stayed out of the public eye for personal reasons, Camilla's team allegedly pushed forward with photo ops and carefully curated appearances. One palace aide revealed, "There were moments Catherine felt completely sidelined, like her role was being redefined without her." Behind the scenes, she's repeatedly urged a more honest connection with the public, less staged photos, more transparency, and fewer PR-driven distractions. Those close to her say she's been asking one question again and again. Where is the heart in all of this? What really hit hard for her was how emotionally disconnected the royal messaging had become. Catherine reportedly believes that the monarchy can only survive if it speaks with truth, empathy, and purpose. That's why, when she finally entered that room, her words weren't calculated. They were personal. She told the room, "This family survives because the people believe in us." Her message wasn't political. It wasn't about power. It was a protective warning, one rooted in her deep sense of duty to the public, the monarchy, and her children's future. And now that she's spoken, the palace knows. Catherine won't stay silent any longer. William's quiet backing. A coordinated move? Catherine may have spoken the words, but those close to the palace say Prince William was right behind her, quietly pulling strings from the shadows. Insiders believe this wasn't just a spontaneous moment. It was part of a calculated decision, made together, at a time when both felt the monarchy was drifting away from its purpose. For weeks, royal watchers noticed something odd: William's growing absence from major internal briefings. He was visibly missing from at least 3 high-level meetings between October and December 2025, and while some assumed it was scheduling, those close to him now suggest it was intentional distancing. One aide hinted he didn't want to be part of something he no longer believed in. Behind closed doors, William and Catherine have reportedly been holding their own private strategy discussions. Some of these have taken place late at night at Adelaide Cottage, away from royal staff and traditional advisors. Their conversations, according to one friend of the couple, have been focused on modernizing the monarchy, rebuilding public trust, and protecting the legacy they hope to pass down to George, Charlotte, and Louis. One source close to William said he encouraged her to go to that meeting, not as a royal duty, but because he knew only she could say what needed to be said. This wasn't about formality. It was about substance, and making sure the message didn't come from a place of ego, but from someone the public already trusts. In fact, palace aides noticed a shift in William's tone in recent weeks. He's become more direct, less filtered, and more firm in private conversations, especially when it comes to Camilla's growing influence. Some say he's grown frustrated with how Queen Camilla's circle has tried to shape palace strategy, particularly while King Charles's health remains uncertain. And then there's the timing. Catherine's return to that room came just 72 hours after a planned press release, rumored to include a reshaped public calendar favoring Camilla. That release, quietly delayed. It's now believed William and Catherine intervened together, using their combined influence to stop what they saw as a tone-deaf move. There's also growing talk inside the palace of a William and Catherine camp, a small but tight inner circle of loyal staff who now operate separately from the traditional royal machinery. They're said to favor direct communication, controlled media leaks, and selective public appearances, all aimed at reshaping how the public sees the monarchy. So while Catherine's moment at that briefing made headlines, it might have been the result of something much deeper. A quiet but powerful united front, forming between the future king and queen. And now, all eyes are on the palace's reaction. Because if this was a coordinated move, it's only the first step. Palace shockwaves. Immediate reactions in the room. What happened after Catherine spoke was unlike anything the palace had seen in years. The room, packed with senior aides, long-serving strategists, and royal media handlers, fell completely silent. No one expected her. No one planned for her. And yet, the moment she finished speaking, everything shifted. One insider described the atmosphere as icy but electric. Another said, "It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room." She didn't shout, but her words hit like thunder. Several of the more senior advisors looked visibly shaken. A few tried to return to the original agenda, focusing on Camilla's rebranding and the messaging around King Charles's declining visibility. But they quickly realized the tone had changed. The old script no longer worked. Catherine had cut through the politics, and no one dared challenge her directly. Some aides admitted afterwards that it was the first time in months someone had said out loud what many were privately thinking, that the palace's current strategy was too focused on control, not enough on connection. Her words, "We are losing sight of who we serve," landed hard. They weren't just commentary, they were a wake-up call. Within hours, follow-up meetings were cancelled. A media plan that was due to roll out in early January 2026, focusing on Camilla-led initiatives, was reportedly put on hold. And a draft memo on minimizing William's public appearances, quietly circulated for approval, was suddenly scrapped. One longtime royal insider told us, "That wasn't just an interruption, that was a line in the sand." It's clear that Catherine's presence wasn't just felt, it forced a complete recalibration. Even staff loyal to Camilla seemed rattled. Some sources say they tried to downplay the moment in private, calling it emotional timing or out of protocol. But no one could deny that it left the room with a different energy. Her words weren't political, they were moral, and that made them harder to fight. There's now rising talk that this wasn't just a one-off. Staff are reviewing future meeting protocols, wondering if Catherine will attend again, and more importantly, whether they should now expect her voice in all major decisions going forward. Because after that moment, one thing became very clear. Catherine isn't waiting for permission anymore. And next, Camilla's inner circle is not staying quiet. They're already fuming behind the scenes. Camilla's camp responds. Defensive or defeated? The ripple effect from Catherine's stunning intervention didn't take long to reach Queen Camilla's inner circle. And when it did, the mood was described as furious. According to palace sources, Camilla was not warned in advance that Catherine would be at the meeting. In fact, she had reportedly been briefed earlier that morning that the session would proceed with no major disruptions. So when news of Catherine's bold interruption reached her just hours later, her team was already scrambling for damage control. Inside her camp, reactions were mixed, but all intense. Some of Camilla's closest allies saw the move as a calculated power play. One aide was overheard saying, "This wasn't just a surprise appearance, this was a strike." Others accused Catherine of undermining King Charles, especially at a time when his health issues have made the palace vulnerable to speculation. There's growing unease among Camilla's team about the timing. The Queen was expected to step into a higher public role starting January 2026, with several solo engagements and a new mental health campaign. Those plans are now under review, according to a senior planner. Catherine's words may have halted that rollout altogether. Still, not everyone in Camilla's circle is defiant. Some privately admitted that Catherine's message had moral weight. One senior figure close to the king reportedly said, "No one could argue with what she said. It wasn't political, it was right." And that's what makes this so dangerous for Camilla's side. Catherine didn't break rules, she broke the silence. And what about Camilla herself? So far, she has made no public comment, not even a mention during a recent engagement in Wiltshire. Some believe she's been advised to remain silent, fearing that any reaction might worsen the divide and draw more attention to internal cracks. But the tension is now out in the open. Inside the palace, there's talk that the relationship between Catherine and Camilla, already strained, has reached a new low. While the public sees royal smiles, behind the scenes it's become a careful game of moves, counter-moves, and now, surprise interventions. And the media? They've caught wind of the drama, and they're not letting it go. Because next comes the leak that threw royal forums into a frenzy. Media buzz. Leak sends royal watchers into a frenzy. The palace may have stayed silent, but someone inside didn't. Within 24 hours of Catherine's dramatic appearance, a trusted aide leaked key details to a well-connected royal reporter. That single leak exploded across X, formerly Twitter, major tabloids, and royal fan forums, setting off what one insider called a digital earthquake. The story quickly dominated headlines. Phrases like "Catherine interrupts classified royal meeting," "course corrects palace strategy," and "a royal reckoning" were everywhere. Royal reporters jumped on it, not just for the shock factor, but because of who leaked it. This wasn't gossip. It came from someone on the inside, with direct knowledge of the moment and its fallout. Hashtags like #KateKnowsBest, #TheFutureQueenSpeaks, and #RoyalRealityCheck began trending across the UK and beyond. Within 48 hours, more than 300,000 posts mentioned Catherine's name, most of them praising her courage, clarity, and emotional honesty. Even traditionally critical voices in the press admitted it was a genuine leadership moment. Royal expert Talia Martin wrote, "This wasn't just a return, it was a statement. Catherine has stepped back in, and she brought the public with her." Commentators pointed out that the tone of the leak was deliberate. It didn't reveal private medical details or personal drama. It focused squarely on the words Catherine spoke and the reaction they sparked. That's what made it powerful. It wasn't tabloid fluff. It was a moral message, and it landed. Some believe the leak was part of a controlled strategy, possibly approved by Catherine and William themselves, to send a clear message to both the palace and the public. We're watching, we're stepping in, and we're not afraid to speak. Now, public opinion has clearly shifted. People aren't just supporting Catherine, they're rallying behind her values. In a moment when the monarchy felt distant, she made it feel real again. And as that wave of support builds, the palace faces a critical question. Can they stop it? Or must they follow it? Coming up, the public's verdict is loud and clear, and it's all in Catherine's favor. Public reaction. Catherine wins the moment. The people have spoken, and they're with Catherine. Within just 72 hours of the leaked story, public support for the Princess of Wales surged to its highest since her health break in early 2025. Social media platforms exploded with admiration. On Instagram, thousands flooded royal posts with comments like, "This is the Queen we need," and "Catherine speaks for all of us." On TikTok, clips analyzing her words racked up over 15 million views in a single weekend. Hashtags like #FutureQueen, #KateKnowsBest, and #MonarchyWithHeart dominated trends. Not just in the UK, but across the Commonwealth. Even users who usually criticize the royals were calling her out as a voice of reason in a sea of spin. Polls mirrored the mood. A flash poll conducted on Monday morning showed that 87% of respondents supported Catherine's decision to speak out. even though it went against tradition. That's not just approval, that's a mandate. What's different this time? People are tired. After months of vague updates, confusing decisions, and whispers about King Charles's health, Catherine's message felt real. It wasn't polished PR, it was a human moment, and it cut through the noise. Young people in particular are responding. Viewers under 35, a group often disengaged from royal affairs, are now voicing renewed interest in the monarchy, but only if it's led by William and Catherine. One post summed it up best: "If Kate's leading, I'm watching again." Even major news outlets that typically lean neutral took a side. The Evening Standard called it the most honest royal moment in years. And a popular editorial in The Guardian declared, "Catherine just redefined what modern monarchy could look like. Truthful, grounded, and unafraid." This wave of public support has now become impossible to ignore. Inside the palace, aides are reportedly scrambling to adjust upcoming plans, unsure how to follow a moment they didn't control. Because now, the people aren't just watching, they're choosing. And they've chosen her. Up next, will Catherine take on more power sooner than expected? The countdown may have already started. What happens next? Will Catherine take a bigger role sooner than expected? After the shock came the silence, and now the shift. Inside Buckingham Palace, aides are scrambling to adjust. What was meant to be a slow recovery for Catherine has turned into a bold return to power. That one unexpected appearance didn't just make headlines, it forced the palace to rethink everything. Starting January 2026, sources confirm Catherine is being included in select strategy briefings. Her words carry new weight, and staff admit she's back and she's involved. Prince William is also quietly making moves, rearranging his schedule for more joint planning and appearances. Their inner team, known as the Cambridge Corps, is rising fast, pushing for transparency, modern messaging, and public trust. Meanwhile, concerns over King Charles's health and Camilla's unclear role are accelerating what some call a quiet transition. A senior courtier revealed, the timeline has changed, and Catherine is at the center of it. The palace now faces a choice: support her re-entry, or fall behind a public that's already rallying behind her. Because after that one powerful moment, nothing is the same. Catherine is no longer the future. She's the present. And she's not stepping back. She's stepping in. The room changed. The balance shifted. And from this moment on, the palace will never sound the same again inside.